I'm not teaching here, I'll do it. And then we have a couple of other pastors that are really good teachers. All right. Hey, good morning, everybody. Come on now. Are we here? Are we awake? Are we good? We ready? Well, if you weren't here last night, man, you're going to get it at the 10 a.m. First off, let's welcome Frank Turek here with us again this weekend. For those that weren't here, it's going to be a good day. We're going to jump right in. We've got a packed day today. We're going to do this interview and then the 10 a.m. service, which will be what Frank did last night at the 5 p.m., and then a very unique part 2 service today, a little different than what we typically have on a weekend, a 1 p.m. that we're going to do today as well, right after lunch. Frank, I want to jump right in. This book, now this is cool because this is hot off the press. You said last night, I think I'm the only one that has maybe a copy of it.
Yeah, there's very few people that have that.
I feel
doesn't
really
come out till
special.
September 8th. So.
I feel special. This is one of his new books called The War on Reality, and you've taken this and tell us about it.
Well, we've noticed that in recent years, there's literally a war on what's really right and true. I mean, everything from men can be pregnant to abortion is health care to God doesn't exist, there's no evidence for God, people will say, to math is racist. Have you heard that one?
Yeah.
Yeah, that just doesn't add up for me. Logic and reason are tools of oppression. And there are two groups of people out there, the oppressors and the oppressed. And it doesn't matter what your personal behavior is. If you're considered an oppressor by certain qualities, you're automatically guilty and should never be heard. I mean, you wonder why there's a culture war. It's because people look at other people without knowing their behavior and automatically judging them as being evil. And so this is just cultural Marxism.
Yeah.
We also talk about AI in there. We talk about Christian nationalism. You know, people always talk about that, like Christians shouldn't be involved in politics, as if only atheists are qualified to run the country. I don't know where people come up with this stuff, but in any event, we cover all of that. And we were writing that book, me and a lady by the name of Phoenix Hayes, who's worked with us in our ministry. And we were writing it prior to Charlie being murdered. And then once that happened, we dedicated the book to him. And the first chapter is all about how Charlie and I originally met and what we were doing together and why, what was happening leading up to that day, what happened that day, and what happened after. So Erica wrote the foreword for it. The foreword didn't make the first printing of the book because she was very busy. But it will be in the second printing. But you can read the foreword at thewaronreality.com. It's up there. It's quite profound. Erica there's a reason Charlie married her, and it's not just because she's beautiful. It's because she is a very devoted Christian and a very, very, very sharp woman. And when you read that foreword, you go, wow. She sent it to me. She said, you can change anything you want. I said, I don't need to change a word. What are you talking about?
Wow.
This is profound.
Yeah.
In fact, one of the things she says in the foreword, I'm paraphrasing, but she said, my reality changed on 9/10/2025. And she said, I found that I get peace not by denying reality, but by surrendering to it. Because I don't know if you know this, ladies and gentlemen, but if you think about it, reality is undefeated. You can deny reality, you can fight against reality, but reality's going to win because reality is what it is. And the author of reality is Jesus. That's why he said, I am the truth, and the truth will set you free.
That's right.
What does that imply? It implies if you don't have Jesus, you don't have the truth, you're in bondage. Set free? What do I need to be set free from? You need to be set free from your sin, from bad thinking, from fighting against the author of reality. So the book covers quite a bit, and the first chapter is really about what happened with Charlie.
I'd love to hear just your perspective, because I think you met Charlie 4 or 5 years before he was murdered. give us a little bit, because you spent a lot of time with him. Just tell us a little bit about who the guy really, really was behind the scenes, because a lot of us have formed kind of maybe a grid of him just through little snippets that we can see on various video clips, and some, modified to present a certain angle. But you've got a lot of time with him. Tell us a little bit about who he was as a person.
Kind of the same person off the stage as on the stage, just like you experienced when he came here,
Yeah.
right? I mean, when you only see somebody on video clips, you think, okay, I know this person. But then when you really meet them, you realize that the person, if the person's not a phony, the person is the same person off camera as on.
Right.
And that's Charlie.
Yeah.
I mean, Charlie was somebody who was always learning, always trying to build. You know how hard it is to build? You can tear things down, and you can build it. It might take you a year to build a house. It take you 5 minutes to tear it down, right?
Yeah. Wow.
Building is hard. Tearing down is easy. And Charlie was a builder. And when he was murdered, somebody tore him down in a split second. Although, as Christians, we know he's not really gone. He's gone from us. But the worst thing that anyone can do to you is simply change your address. He has a different address now with the Lord. But Charlie, same person off the stage as on the stage. And back in early 2020, he emailed our ministry because I put the email that he sent us in the first chapter because he had been watching some of our videos from college campuses, because I've been going to college campuses for like 20 years. And that's what he was doing. And he said, oh, I've watched a lot of your videos. They've really helped me. I'd like to meet you, da-da-da-da. So I got back to him, and we just became fast friends. And then in last summer, as he was getting ready for the next college tour, he said, we need to meet a bunch of times so we can sharpen one another and you can help me answer some of these questions. Now, keep in mind, I wasn't Charlie's only mentor. Charlie had a lot of mentors. Because,
he was like a sponge.
Yeah, he was very smart. He knew as a young man he had a lot to learn, even though he was amazingly gifted. And of course, it can be hard to mentor somebody smarter than you. But not Charlie, because the only thing that exceeded his intellect was his humility.
Yeah,
really
true.
The few things that I knew that he didn't know, he wanted to know. And so that's why he reached out.
Yeah.
But he had other mentors in his life. I mean, he really was a humble guy who just wanted to learn. Unlike me, because I have a new book out. It's called 10 Steps to Humility and How I Made It in 7. Which is very humble of me. I actually made it in 6, Pastor Wes. So, no,
That's very humble of you.
Yeah, it is. It's very humble of me to say. But he was just the same guy, just a driven guy who, in fact, I heard Andrew Colvett yesterday, who is Charlie's producer and friend. Charlie wrote a book on the Sabbath just before he died, was murdered, and he sent me the book, and he said, can you proof this? I said, sure. I hardly had to change a word,
wow.
Right? And Andrew was saying yesterday that the Sabbath for him was so necessary because he was so driven. He's like, I would get calls from Charlie. He was like President Trump, call you at 3 a.m., and say, I need this, right? That's the way Charlie was, always thinking. And he just needed to have a day where he shut down.
Right.
Otherwise, he'd never get any peace, right? So for him, he wasn't saying the Sabbath is obligatory. He was just saying it was very wise.
Yeah. Very needed.
Very needed, yeah.
Yeah. Let's get into the 4 things. You said in this first chapter, because I got this yesterday, I read chapter 1 before the service last night, and you were saying there were really 4 things that he was heavily discussing and realizing, okay, this needs to be on the crosshairs of what we go and address with young people. Let's go through those things. Let's talk about the first one, if you don't mind, the idea of the threat of Islam and immigration.
Yeah, how this came up was, in addition to meeting during the day, maybe in his office going through stuff, he would say, hey, after dinner, after we put the kids down, can we go on a walk, through the streets of Scottsdale? We'll just talk. I said, sure. So September 8th, this is Monday night. He was just murdered on Wednesday. On Monday night, we're walking through the streets of Scottsdale, always with a 300-pound bodyguard behind us. And I said, hey, what do you want to talk about, Charlie? And he'd say, the first thing we started talking about that night was Islam and politics. And he rightly pointed out that Islam, as described in the Quran and as lived out for 1,400 years, is not compatible with the United States Constitution. The First Amendment gives us freedom of religion and freedom of speech and other freedoms. The First Amendment is not a self-defeating amendment, meaning it doesn't give one religion the freedom of religion to take away the freedom of religion from every other religious person, which is what Islam does.
Yeah.
Right? If you're not a Muslim, you're a second-class citizen, or you can be killed. Now, again, this doesn't mean every Muslim believes this. I hear this all the time. Well, there's many peaceful Muslims. Yeah, there are. The problem is the peaceful Muslims never seem to oppose the more radical Muslims, because 57 of the countries out there that are Islamic countries don't have freedom of religion.
Right.
They don't have the same freedoms we have.
It's forced.
Islam, yes, is not just a religion, it's a geopolitical movement.
Right.
And that's been going on for 1,400 years. And we were talking about the fact, I said, Charlie, Islam, or this idea of Islamophobia, is a bogus term. Even atheists like Richard Dawkins, who we'll talk about today, who wrote The God Delusion, he goes, Islam's not a race, it's an ideology.
Right.
And you ought to be concerned about an ideology that wants to subjugate people who are not Muslims to be second-class citizens or maybe even murder them. And so we talked a lot about that. We talked about government. We talked about how Christians need to be engaged in government. The second thing that night we talked about was the evidence for Christianity, and basically 2 points or 2 beliefs that you need to get evidence for, that if you can show these 2 beliefs are true, then Christianity is true. The first is that God exists, and the second is that Jesus rose from the dead. If those 2 facts are true, if they're real true facts, that God exists and Jesus rose from the dead, mark it down. Christianity is true.
Yeah.
From that point, you can show that the Bible's true. In fact, that's what we do in the book, I Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist. So we talked a lot about evidence for the resurrection. And in fact, one of the things we were talking about rhetorically, as I said, we were just going back and forth and saying, what would the Jewish writers of the New Testament, because all the writers of the New Testament were Jews, ladies and gentlemen, why would the Jewish writers of the New Testament a man claimed to be God? They didn't think that was possible. That'd be blasphemy. And secondly, that this guy rose from the dead. They weren't anticipating that either. Why would they go about saying that and then suffer all sorts of persecution? Because by saying Jesus claimed to be God and rose from the dead, they were kicked out of the synagogue and then beaten, tortured, and killed. Last time I checked, that was on a list of perks. Like why would you do that, right? So we talked a lot about that.
Yeah.
And then the third major issue we talked about that night, and we spent probably most of our time on this, was how can we get his generation, he's 31 at the time, to embrace marriage? Because I don't know if you saw this, but after the 2024 election, there was a survey done, and it essentially found that men were much more interested in getting married in his generation than were the women. Like the women weren't interested. And so we're trying to figure out, how could we influence women to want to get married? Because the men did and the women didn't. And we didn't come up with an answer that night, but we're like, this is a big problem.
Yeah.
Now, in retrospect, I didn't think about it that night, but in retrospect, Charlie was talking about the 3 institutions that God created. He created government, he created the church, and he created the family. So he was thinking strategically about the biggest issues that a Christian could be concerned about.
Yeah.
Government, the church, and the family. And then the next day, this is the day before he was murdered, we're in his office, and he had called a meeting, a Zoom meeting, with representatives in Israel. Two were in Israel. One was a Jewish person living in the United States on this Zoom call. And it was me, Charlie, Blake Neff, and Mikey McCoy. And the whole purpose of the meeting was to ask these Jewish people questions that Charlie's getting asked on college campuses. How could we better answer questions related to Israel, Hamas, that kind of thing?
Not theologically, mostly just geopolitics.
Yeah, mostly political. What's going on over there?
Yeah.
What's correct about all this?
Right.
And Charlie and I had spoken privately about that before, because he was getting heat from some donors who said to him, well, if you don't support everything Israel does,
Yeah. No criticism.
yeah, no criticism at all, then you're not a real Christian, that kind of thing. And
Right.
he said, what do you say to that? I said, Charlie, bless Israel, whatever that means, doesn't mean that you approve of everything Israel does. Just like if you want to bless your kids, you don't approve of everything they do.
Yeah.
That's not blessing them.
Right.
You know, the proverb that says, an enemy multiplies kisses, but wounds from a friend are good. Right? You should, if you love somebody and want to bless them, tell them when they're going wrong.
That's right.
Because love doesn't mean approval. You know,
Yeah.
in our culture, we think love means approval. No, it doesn't.
Yeah.
I mean, you guys know this is, how many parents do we have in here? All right, how many former children do we have in here? Okay, good. Look, that's all of us then, right? If you approve of everything your 13-year-old wants to do, are you loving? No, of course not. You're enabling evil if you do that.
That's right.
And so this kind of very shallow, thin view of blessing makes some people have the wrong view of what it means to
That's right.
bless Israel.
Yeah.
Right? And so
And you got to point out too, the Jewish Old Testament prophets
oh yeah.
were very critical
Yes.
of the nation. of
That's
Israel,
right,
to
all
say
the time.
least.
Yeah, that's right. And most of the kings, all the kings of the northern kingdom of Israel were evil, and only a handful of the southern kingdom of Judah were good.
Yeah.
So when some people say, well, you can't bless Israel because they're all apostates over there, you go, they were apostates throughout the whole Bible too.
That's right.
Of course, it's just the fact that God is using these people to bless the whole world, to bring the
right.
Messiah. And so we also talked about the idea that, you know, for some reason, there's a lot of propaganda out there which somehow has flipped the script to say that Israel is always the bad guy.
Right.
And we had a thought experiment on that meeting. I said, what do you think would happen if a cartel in, say, Mexico came across the border in Texas and proportionately murdered 30,000 people and took several other thousand people across the border and held them hostage?
Jeez.
What would we say? Would we have any confusion as to who the good guys and bad guys are?
No.
No, we would go over there, free the hostages, obliterate the cartel, and then have a parade several zip codes long
Yeah.
about how it was righteous to stop this. But somehow you go over to Israel and people lose their minds. I don't have any other way of explaining this than it has to be demonic.
Yeah.
Why are the Jewish people the most persecuted group of people in the world for millennia? Why is that? These people are upstanding mostly. I mean, they won a disproportionate number of Nobel Prizes. You know, they're industrious people generally. Why are they the most persecuted people in history?
Yeah.
The only thing I can think of, it's got to be demonic. It's got to be demonically influenced.
That's right.
So now step back from all this. In the last 2 days of his life, Charlie was concerned about the four things God's most concerned with: the government, the family, the church, and Israel. And that's what chapter 1 leading up to the assassination is all about. Charlie was not giving up on Israel. He was doing his homework.
Yeah.
In fact, last August, when he was getting some heat from people who were so pro-Israel that Charlie couldn't say anything negative about anything going on in Israel, he showed me this text from a donor, and he was so mad because this donor wanted him to change what he was saying. And he said, I'm not going to do it. And I looked at him. I said, Charlie, that's one reason I love you. You are not going to change your position for money.
Oh, I love that.
And he wouldn't.
Praise God.
That person pulled $1 million from him.
Yeah. Wow.
He went,
Costly decision.
not
didn't
going to do
waver.
it. Do what's right, leave the results to God.
Come on.
Right?
Yeah.
And by the way, those are the three major temptations we all have: sex, money, and power.
That's right.
If you're tempted by any of those, you have to put guardrails around yourself. And Charlie was smart enough to know he wasn't going to compromise for any of those things.
Yeah. Take us into the next, Charlie's assassinated. For those of you that don't know, Frank was about 20 feet to Charlie's right when Charlie was very publicly executed. That was absolutely insane. You've went through the detail of that in various podcasts. I don't want to use this time to do that now. But then leading up to this historic memorial, which was, I think it was 2 weeks later. Is that right?
9 days later.
You were a part of that. You played a role in that. Give us a feel. We had a viewing here. We packed the place out here and watched it live, or many of us did. That was a historic day. I mean, you even put the numbers in here. Tell us a little bit about that, of just how miraculous it was to even pull it off in such a short amount of time, and then just being there and experiencing what happened on that day.
Well, TPUSA has been one of the most professional organizations I've ever encountered. Their events were always done first class.
Yeah.
Like Christians should do everything first class. Tragically, in our culture, Christian art, Christian events are always viewed as second tier, and many times they are, but not with TPUSA. Charlie was concerned about excellence. And so when all that happened, in all their grief, they knew they had to pull off a tribute to Charlie. And I didn't have anything to do with planning it. They just asked me to be a part of it. But that team was incredible to secure that, basically the Arizona Cardinals arena there. What is it, State Farm, whatever that place is, football stadium. And for them to organize it, get all those people there. I mean, very rarely does the president and vice president go to the same place for security reasons. But they were there. Almost the entire cabinet was there.
Yeah.
And those who were asked to speak were people that either knew Charlie or were on his team, or were the pastors and politicians that knew him. So, what was that thing, like 9 hours long?
Yeah.
It was.
It was a full day event.
By the way, did you notice at that memorial that none of the musicians were introduced?
Yeah.
They weren't there looking for any sort of pop on social media, so to speak.
Yeah.
Many people didn't even know who they were.
Right.
I mean, in my day, the big, and he still is Chris Tomlin, right? The big sort of Christian music guy. He was there. I got to talk to Chris, but nobody ever said, "Here's Chris Tomlin with," no.
Right.
Right.
Hours just worshiping.
Yeah, Brandon Lake was there.
Yeah.
I mean, and I'm old. I didn't even know who Brandon Lake was. I'm going, this guy can sing. Who is this?
He's packing out stadiums
Yeah.
everywhere with worship events.
Yeah. And so they just had it scripted out, like, you're going to speak here, you're going to speak there. And they had, I mean, who knew Marco Rubio had the gospel nailed?
Blazing
Didn't he?
clear.
Yeah.
It was remarkable.
Marco Rubio. Well, Marco Rubio does everything well, as you can tell. He's like he's got every kind of job now. That's the meme, right?
That's the meme,
Marco Rubio's doing it. Hegseth, even Tulsi Gabbard, who's probably not a Christian herself. Even Don Jr. Don Jr. Someone told Don Jr. what to say because he's talking about Acts chapter 6 and Stephen's martyrdom, right? I mean, he's a smart guy, but I don't know if he's really a Christian. But man, he had a good message. You know, everybody. It was just an anointed day, and it's the day where more people heard the gospel at one time in one setting than any time in history.
Yeah.
I still get emails from people or comments saying, I became a Christian because of Charlie Kirk.
Wow.
I got emails from people in Sweden. I was an atheist for 26 years. Now I'm a Christian because of Charlie Kirk.
Wow.
There's always a ripple effect. In Charlie's case, it was a tsunami,
Yeah.
you know, of salvations and discipleships and
Right.
people rededicating themselves. I mean, I've heard this over and over again. I've never mourned so much for someone I didn't know.
Wow.
Have you guys felt that? I mean, how many emails I've gotten? I didn't even know him. I never met him, and I was a wreck for weeks.
Yeah.
Why is that?
It's really true. Really true.
Yep.
Frank, over the last, well, we're coming up on a year here before too long, September 10th.
By the way, September 10th, we're going to be back on that campus, UVU, for an event.
I saw that. Tell us a little bit more about what that is.
Well, we were there in March to do an event for the students, but this event's going to be in the arena, and Erica wanted to do something that day, so there's going to be, it's 6:30 Mountain Time on the 10th. I'm sure it'll be live streamed. So it'll be what, 7:30 here. And a bunch of us are just going to, there's going to be music. It's going to be like a worship service. I'll lead off with some short remarks and a prayer, and then you have Andrew Cipher, who runs the campus ministry for them, and the young man who was the TPUSA leader on campus at the time, he'll be there. Glenn Beck will be there. Erica's going to hope to get there as well. So
Wow.
that's the 1-year anniversary. Yeah.
This last year, it seems like in a lot of the circles that were really, in unison with Charlie, there's been just a blow up of deception and division and mockery and turning on things. Even those 4 things that we just listed there, all of a sudden a confused stance on even some of those core issues. What do you take of that? How have you navigated that?
Well, Jesus and the apostles called Satan a murderer, liar, accuser, and slanderer who seeks to steal, kill, and destroy. We had a murder on 9/10, and then after the memorial service, what have we had since then? Lies, accusations, and slander seeking to steal, kill, and destroy.
Wow.
And people don't believe in the demonic. How could it be more obvious?
Yeah.
Right? I mean, one thing Charlie was wonderful at, among many, was keeping a coalition together. He could keep Tucker Carlson and Ben Shapiro in the same room and say to them, do you want to get 0% of what you want or 80% of what you want?
Yeah.
We need to stay together. But as soon as...
A guy in his 20s had the ability to do that.
Charlie's...
amazed me.
Charlie's, once his address was changed, he's not here anymore. And now you can see all the demonic influence. You know how hard it is to build? It's very hard to build, very easy to tear down. And that's what Candace Owens is doing. Well, she's trying to build up her own brand. I don't know her motives. I don't judge her motives. But you don't accuse people of murder without evidence.
Right.
She has speculation. She has no evidence. Tucker Carlson, same thing. Somehow the Jews are responsible for everything. Gee, where have we heard that before? You know, if the Jews are behind and responsible for everything, why do they even still exist?
Right.
Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson and others. I mean, it is very, very demonic. And I don't know either of them personally, but you just look at the fruit.
Yeah.
Look at the fruit of what's coming. You can tear down anything. Building something takes a lot of work.
Yeah. You've continued in Christian apologetics, still doing your campuses, still reaching young people. Give us what you feel, kind of the state of the union, if you will, as far as your ministry there, things that Charlie did, you're continuing it on. What do you see? I mean, do you feel like there is real momentum and growth? Do you feel that we're up against just process a little bit with us about what you experience in real time.
Well, I think it's kind of a mixed bag. I think there are many more people interested in Christianity now, but I also think the forces of darkness are, as you can see, rising as well. I mean, you just saw, who's this guy, Piker guy? Hassan Piker?
Right.
He was yesterday, the day before, mocking the murder of Charlie Kirk. Now, do you think any Christian, do you think Charlie Kirk would be mocking the murder of anyone else? No. By their fruits you will know them. So there's a lot of evil out there, and this is why Christians have to be engaged at every level of society. Obviously, we have to be engaged in the church. We have to be engaged in the family. We have to be engaged in the government. We have to be engaged in what happens to Israel, because these are things that God has established and cares about. And when people say, well, you know, I don't get involved in those things, I just preach the gospel.
Yeah.
I say to them, I guess you don't think the gospel is very important then. And they say, well, what do you mean? Well, let's take politics, for example. You don't think politics is important? Do you realize that politics can affect your ability to preach and live the gospel? If you don't think so, go to some of the countries I've been to. I've been to Iran. There's no First Baptist Church of Tehran. I checked. I've been to Saudi Arabia. There's no Calvary Chapel of Mecca.
Right.
I just got back from Egypt not long ago. If you want to start Grace Church in Egypt, you're going to have trouble.
That's right.
Why? Because politically, they've ruled it out.
That's right.
So for no other reason you ought to be involved politically is to protect your ability to preach and live the gospel. And Charlie used to say this all the time. He said, politics is not our first responsibility, but it helps us achieve our first responsibility. Because without political freedom, we don't have the same capacity to spread the gospel. And some people will say, well, you know, sometimes the gospel spreads through persecution, to which I respond, yeah, sometimes it does and sometimes it doesn't. How well is it doing in North Korea right now? Right? And by the way, you don't allow evil to take over a society in order to get a good result, what you think might be a good result. You don't try and advance the gospel through negligence, right? Well, if we just allow evil to overrun the country, the church will grow. Maybe it will, maybe it won't.
Yeah.
You don't know. What you do is you do what's right and leave the results to God. And the second reason, in the book, we have a chapter, there's 10 reasons why you ought to be involved politically. But the second, let me just give you a broad reason, is because we're called to love people. And you're not loving people when you have the capacity to put laws in place that protect them from evil, and you don't do it.
That's right.
I ask this of people all the time. We say, I don't get involved politically. I say, oh, do you think Christians should not have gotten involved politically 160 years ago to outlaw slavery? Is that what you're telling me?
That's right.
And they all go, oh, well, yeah, we should. Welcome to politics, ladies and gentlemen, of course. And you just saw a week or two ago out there in Massachusetts, that they passed a law that said you can kill your baby up to the moment of birth now. You can take a full-term baby and execute it. And they were applauding this.
Yeah.
There's no better description of this than Romans chapter 1. You read Romans chapter 1, you suppress the truth and unrighteousness on these sexual issues. It leads you to a depraved mind. To the end of Romans chapter 1, it says, these people not only do these things, They give hearty approval to those who practice them. They're cheering on evil. And they're not only doing it, they want others to do it as well.
Yeah.
Do you remember when Bill Clinton was president many years ago and he used to say things like this, I want abortion to be safe, legal, and rare. And you say, okay, that doesn't actually make sense, but at least you're not celebrating abortion, right? Like, why does it have to be rare? Is there something wrong with it? If it is, why should it be legal?
Yeah.
Right? But now today, people are cheering abortion on. It's like a sacrament. In fact, notice the slogan of the pro-abortion movement. This is my body. What does that sound like to you? They're taking the words of Jesus for the Eucharist, for communion. This is my body. It's a sacrament to these people.
Yeah.
They're shout your abortion now. I don't know if you've seen Brandon Gill. Do you know who Brandon Gill is? He's a congressman from Texas. He's in his very first term. He's actually the son-in-law of Dinesh D'Souza, the conservative filmmaker and author. Anyway, a month or two ago, he had some pro-abortion person in his subcommittee, and of course, he's interviewing her, and he started asking her questions. What's your favorite method of abortion? Do you like this method, where the baby is dismembered in the womb and then we pull body parts out? Do you prefer that one? How about the saline method? That's where we inject the baby with saline solution so the baby burns alive in the womb, and then we take out the corpse. How about, and he kept going through all these abortion methods.
Yeah.
And she's squirming in her seat going, I'm not here to talk about that. I'm not here to talk about it. She's suppressing the truth.
Yeah.
Because she wants something more than protecting an innocent baby's life.
It's actually one of the most effective ways to open people's eyes on the wickedness of abortion, is that right there.
Yeah, you just speaking the truth.
Yeah.
And that's why people often will try and attack you if you point it out.
Yeah.
And we point out in the book that there's something known as linguistic theft. This is one of the tactics that are used by people trying to advance this kind of thing. They put pleasant, moral-sounding words on evil. So they'll say, well, abortion is reproductive justice.
Yeah.
Right? Reproductive justice? What? Or they'll say that the baby isn't a baby, it's a clump of cells. Or it's the product of conception. Have you heard that? Well, we're all products of conception. Yeah. We're clumps of cells too, right? And they'll use pleasant sounding words like choice and equality, and what are they doing? They're whitewashing something that's evil.
Yeah.
You only need to whitewash things that are evil. You don't need to whitewash things that are good. And people are deceived by this. If any of us in here saw an abortion and the remains of an abortion, we'd be horrified. Now, we need to say this when we're talking about this. There's probably been people in this room that have had an abortion. Mm-hmm. We're not here to condemn you for that. What we're here to do is to say, put that under the cross.
Yeah.
Because all sins can be forgiven. But we just want to encourage other people not to make the same sinful act. I always ask people who are pro-abortion, I ask them this question: what problem do you think can be solved by killing your own child? Do you think that's a good solution to any problem, killing your own child? I got the solution to this. Let's kill Johnny. Where do we come up with this rationale? That's never the solution.
That's right. We'll end with this. Let's say that, I'm 18, about to head into college. You're very aware with some of the culture, the tactics to challenge Christian understanding, Christian worldview. Whether you're speaking to parents or actual students about to go, how do you encourage them to be equipped? What are the steps to take to think critically and to think biblically and to not drink the Kool-Aid.
My mentor, Dr. Norman Geisler, who wrote over 100 books, this is going to sound controversial, but it's not. Teach your kids logic before you teach them the Bible. Why? Because you need logic to understand the Bible.
That's right.
You need logic to understand anything. But we don't teach logic in public school anymore. Instead of teaching kids how to think, we're teaching them what to feel. And that can be dangerous. Why? Because if you follow your feelings without reason or without moral restraint, you're going to wind up in a very dark place. You need to know logic. We have a course, an online course called Train Your Brain. It's written for 6th to 8th graders. And we tell parents to take it because it's written for 6th to 8th graders. Even you parents can understand logic. Now, I got to warn you, if your kids take this class, they're going to be impossible to live with. Because they're going to say stuff like, sorry, Dad, ad hominem attack. Mom, slippery slope doesn't work. Sorry. You know, hasty generalization, sis. Sorry. No, but let me give you an example of this. Just a practical example of illogic. This is going on in the Israel-Hamas thing. By the way, I get questions on this on college campuses all the time about Israel-Hamas. My first question back when somebody asks me a question about it is, have you read the Hamas charter? Only one person has said yes. For those that don't, I say to them, consider yourself uneducated to have an opinion. Because if you haven't read the Hamas charter, you don't know what's going on over there.
Right.
Because if you read the Hamas charter, we quote it in the book, it basically is genocide against the Jews. You know that famous saying that they have over there? From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. You know what that is? It's basically a call to genocide the Jews. They don't want a two-state solution. They want a one-state solution.
Yeah. No
Israel, kill all the Jews. It's right in their documents. And every president, including Trump, gets this wrong. Let's have a two-state solution. They don't want a two-state solution.
Right.
You know what? There is a two-state solution. Winston Churchill thought about it after World War I. The Palestinian state is called Jordan. But Jordan doesn't want any of them. They don't want jihadists in their own nation.
Yeah.
So here's the hasty generalization. You see a 5 or a 15-second video of something going on over there. You don't know the context, but it looks bad. Same kind of thing that was going on in Minnesota with ICE over last winter. You know, Waltz and Fry and all those bureaucrats up there just let all these illegals who were criminals go. And then ICE had to go out into neighborhoods and track them down. And sometimes there were very unpleasant confrontations. And people see these short videos, and what do? They take those short videos and they apply them to everybody in ICE.
Yeah.
And they say, ICE wants to murder people, defund the police. This is in logic known as a hasty generalization. Same thing is true in Gaza. They see something, it looks bad. Israel's committing genocide. Stop the funding, stop supporting them. It's genocide in Gaza. When in fact the people who are on record for committing genocide, and even in their documents, is Hamas. And so people don't think anymore. They don't realize this is a fallacy in logic called hasty generalization.
So good.
And in fact, when I was growing up, we used to call this prejudice. You remember that word, prejudice? You get one instance of somebody, and then you take everybody who shares that similar characteristic, whether it's skin color or something else, and you say everybody's like this.
Yep.
That's poison. In fact, Amos, the prophet, going after the northern kingdom way back in the 700s BC, in Amos, he actually is talking about the corrupt politicians of Israel. And he says, your justice is poison. Poison! So much of what goes for justice today in our culture is poison. Because you're judging people not on the content of their character, as Martin Luther King said, and as the Bible says, but we're judging them on the color of their skin. We're judging them on whether they're male or female. We're judging them on whether they're Christian or not.
Yeah.
Because there's a whole section in this book, and if people pre-order the book, we're going to send you chapter 10 right away. Chapter 10 might be the most important chapter in the book because we talk about cultural Marxism. And once you see the chart we have in here on page 192, you're immediately going to go, oh, I get it now. Now I know why there's all this conflict. Because there are people out there who will put you in an oppressor category if you have certain qualities. If you're white, if you're a Christian, if you're a male, if you're a U.S. citizen, if you're financially secure, you're automatically considered an oppressor, no matter what your personal behavior is. And guess who had all those 5 qualities? Charlie Kirk.
Yeah.
On the other hand, if you're a minority, if you're a non-Christian, if you are not heterosexual, if you're LGBTQ, if you are not a citizen, if you're not well off, you're automatically considered oppressed. And oppressed people should be heard, and oppressor people shouldn't be heard.
That's right.
These people, oppressors, need to be silenced. The alleged killer, Tyler Robinson, who really appears to be the real killer, the defense isn't even trying to, appears to get him off that church. They just want to prevent him from being executed. Ironically, in Utah, execution is by firing squad.
Wow.
He was so radicalized
Yeah.
that he wanted to tear down somebody who was building, somebody who was good, somebody who was just trying to have a conversation with people. But if they go to thewaronreality.com, and if they go to Amazon, get the book, go to waronreality.com, put their receipt in there, we're going to send you that chapter right away, and then you can see what's going on in our culture right now.
Awesome.
Don't prejudge people. In fact, what does Jesus say in John 7:24? Stop judging by mere appearances and make a right judgment. He's not saying don't judge. You got to judge.
You got to do it right.
It's not based on appearance. It's based on their behavior.
That's right. Thank you, Frank.
Thank you.
I want to let you get out of here. Let's
right.
all stand. We're going to take a short break here. We have service starting right at 10 o'clock. So if you want to stretch your legs, hit the restrooms, do whatever you like, we'll jump right back in here in just a little bit.